Welcome back to The Explainer. We love taking complex, fascinating topics and just breaking them down so you can really see the big picture. And today, we are looking at one of the most famous and intense sporting and cultural rivalries in the absolute world, Rangers and Celtic. But here's the twist. We aren't looking at the football pitch. No, instead, we're looking at the city itself. We're going to explore the forensic geography of Glasgow's sectarian pubs. We'll see exactly how the social fabric of a city is woven right into its streets and local venues. It's like a giant invisible puzzle, and we're going to piece it together. Okay, let's dive right into this. There's this local saying that completely shifts how you have to view Glasgow's urban landscape, and it goes like this. In Glasgow, a pub is never just a pub. And it's so true. These venues aren't just places to grab a quick drink. They actually act as intense territorial markers and socio-political outposts for communities defined entirely by their colors. They're sensory anchors. When we map these pubs out, we are literally overlaying a highly structured map of tribal affiliation right onto a modern urban grid. Now, to really understand how this works, we need to apply a concept called forensic geography. Basically, this is the spatial analysis of how this historic rivalry has literally carved the city into a patchwork of invisible borders. By looking at Glasgow through this forensic lens, we can peel back the modern layers of the city grid to reveal a century of hidden industrial history, migration patterns, and, you guessed it, deeply ingrained social divides. Section 1. The Geography of Belonging. Tracing the 19th century roots. So the physical layout of these pubs is absolutely not just a matter of chance. It was built from the ground up as a direct residue of history. Let's look at the timeline. Back in the early 1800s, Irish Catholic immigrants began arriving and clustered together in specific districts, primarily the East End's Kelton and the South Side's Gorbals. By the mid-1800s, these immigrants had built up self-sustaining community networks intrinsically tied to the church and, inevitably, the local pub. Parallel to all this, moving into the late 1800s, the Protestant-Unionist community, which was deeply tied to the skilled trades of the shipyards and engineering firms, they solidified their own geographical anchors in the northern and eastern suburbs. And here's the thing, these historic settlement clusters didn't just fade away as time went on. No, they actively evolved into what we now recognize as the modern green and blue zones of Glasgow. Over the decades, a pub's very identity became inextricably linked, literally chained, to its physical proximity to the respective heartlands of these historic communities. Section 2. The Blue and Green Zones. Parkhead versus Ibrox. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is when we zoom in on the epicenters of these communities, a super stark geographical contrast emerges. On one side, we have the Green Zone, firmly based in the East End, specifically around Parkhead. On the completely opposing side, the Blue Zone radiates out from the south side, anchored right around Ibrox. These physical locations serve as the ultimate spiritual and geographical homes for both sides of the divide. Let's step inside the Green Zone for a second. The streets immediately surrounding Celtic Park are absolutely saturated with designated venues. And these pubs, they aren't just conveniently located near the stadium, they are literal extensions of the matchday experience. They serve as a pre-match staging area where the community gathers its energy. And then later on, they become a post-match venting chamber where the events of the game are intensely digested by the fans. Meanwhile, across the city, radiating from the south side and Ibrox, the Blue Zone functions quite a bit differently. These pubs extend into various pockets of Glasgow, wherever a strong unionist heritage remains. Rather than just being quick pre-game stops, they act as enduring, everyday communal hubs for the fan base. Their identity is deeply woven into the very fabric of Glasgow's industrial past, directly reflecting the shipyards and skilled trades that historically defines this community. Section 3. Information Nodes. Parallel Formations of the City. And this brilliantly illustrates how, moving beyond just pure geography, there's this overarching system of parallel formations governing Glasgow's social map. We have the Green Zone in the east and the Blue Zone in the south functioning exactly as we just discussed. But right in the middle sits this fascinating third category, the neutral zone in the city center. This introduces what we call the diplomatic zone, and it serves a completely different, highly sensitive sociological function. You see, in all of these zones, pubs actually operate as active information nodes. They're not merely drinking establishments. Far from it. They are highly charged environments where news about the clubs and the communities is actively interpreted. This is the exact space where historical myths are reinforced and where that prevailing us versus them narrative is constantly maintained, calibrated, and then passed down to the next generation. Section 4. City Center Buffer Zones, the High-Tension Frontiers. So what exactly happens when these two highly distinct worlds overlap right in the middle of the city? Well, things get complicated fast. These neutral city center venues essentially act as high-tension frontiers. While an East End pub is undeniably green and a South Side pub is undeniably blue, a city center bar must operate under a completely different set of tactical rules. They become diplomatic zones in the ongoing geographical mapping of the rivalry. Operating a pub in these diplomatic zones, it requires an incredibly delicate balancing act. Venue managers literally have to navigate the rivalry right at the exact point where the two opposing currents of Glasgow life collide. It requires super careful management of the atmosphere to make sure things remain neutral. They have to constantly balance patrons arriving from both of those traditional zones without ever letting the venue swing too far to one side of the cultural divide. Talk about a stressful job, right? Section 5. The persistence of history, tradition versus modernization. Now you might be wondering, how does this old historical map actually hold up against modern urban development? Well, as Glasgow modernizes, we're definitely seeing an influx of trendy, globalized sports bars and modern entertainment venues popping up, especially in the city center. Yet, when you compare them to the traditional generation-old pubs, the core nodes of Glasgow's pub map remain remarkably stable. It's wild. The geography established over a century ago absolutely refuses to be erased by mere urban development. So the crucial point is that for the regulars who frequent these historic venues, they provide way more than just beer. They provide a context for the game. For them, the match isn't just something happening on a TV screen or down the road at a massive stadium. In a very real cultural sense, the match actually happens right there, inside the pub. The physical footprint of these pubs proves that the Old Firm rivalry is absolutely not just some 90-minute spectacle on a patch of grass. It's a 24/7 reality. These invisible borders actively influence where people decide to live, where they work, and heavily dictate where they feel comfortable choosing to pull up a stool and grab a drink. Ultimately, these pubs are the living, breathing architectural manifestations of a profound social divide. Section 6. The City of Borders, a century-long conversation. As we reflect on all these invisible urban lines, the pub map really reveals Glasgow as a city of deep borders drawn directly into the urban fabric. Whether you're standing in a blue zone or a green zone, walking through any traditional pub door means stepping straight into one side of a deeply entrenched divide. In Glasgow, quite literally, every pint comes with a history lesson. Which leaves us with this final, really thought-provoking question to consider. As the city continues to modernize, will globalized sports bars eventually dilute Glasgow's distinct sectarian geography? Or are these blue and green pubs so historically ingrained, so completely foundational to the city's identity, that they will forever define its social map? Let that sink in for a bit. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today, and I'll see you next time as we decode another fascinating topic.